see that. And then, like, again, my biggest thing is, when I became a full preterist, was that seeing the consistency and the overwhelming majority of what is everybody talking about. So for me, it just makes more sense that, even, I mean, again, Paul does talk about 70 AD. Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 that the day is near. Like, pretty much, how does he word, like, don't get married and things like that. I mean, he's 1 Corinthians chapter 10, that the old covenant preached about which were a witness about these days. Hold on, let me just pull that up real quick. So this is the same book. So you have 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 29, which says, "This is what I mean, brothers. The appointed time has grown very short. From now on, let those who have wives live as though they had none, and those who mourn as though they were not mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing, and those who buy as though they had no goods, and those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it, for the present form of this world is passing away." All right, you have that, and then you have chapter 10, which talks about the old covenant, about the rock that was in the wilderness, and all that type of stuff. But it says here,
But how do you see that? Like, it still doesn't make sense in a full preterist paradigm, because what happened? Why is Paul saying that if history is going to just keep moving on after 70 AD? Why is he saying that? It's almost like, and I'm not saying this is true, but it's almost like Paul doesn't exactly know the way things are supposed to pan out.
well, I mean, I know your interpretation on that too, that maybe Paul didn't really know, but everybody
That's just the
else,
way it
like,
seems, like
yeah.
the way he's writing. It's like, how would it make sense if 7 AD is going to be just the destruction of Israel in the old covenant system with the temple, and
Well, it's
yet Paul is talking like it's the end of the world?
well, it does say that the judgment was on the oikumene, not just solely upon Jerusalem. I mean, that was the heart of it, but it does. There were other things that happened throughout the empire. And just to go back to First Corinthians, I mean, 1 Corinthians 10:11 says, "Now talking about Moses and all this stuff. Now these things happened to them," meaning the old covenant people, "as an example, but they were written down for our instructions, on whom the end of the ages has come." I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that is coinciding perfectly with Jesus's own words, with John, with James, with Peter. So, and I would imagine you would take, 1 John chapter 2, this is the last hour. First, you have James in chapter 5. Chapter 5. James chapter 5 says, James chapter 5 is like starting in verse 7. It says, "Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and latter rains. You also be patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you do not judge. Behold, the judge is standing at the door." And now that's also a parallel to Jesus's words that says in Matthew chapter 24, he says, where is that? And you guys know on the top of your hands, I'm here, but let me see. If I had my physical Bible, I would see it, but
What scripture is that?
it's Matthew chapter 24. I'm just going to type in door. Okay, it's verse 33. It says, "Even so, when you see all these things, you shall know that it is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened." So you have the end of the age, Matthew chapter 24, 70 AD. When you see all these things, you know that the judge is standing at the door. You have James chapter 5 telling you that the day of the Lord is near. And he says, let me just scroll up one more time. Verse 9, it says, "Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or be judged. The judge is standing at the door." And he just got done telling you that uh, that the Lord is coming, that the end is near. So you have all these parallel verses that are just so overwhelmingly clear that they're all pointing to the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that's why when I look at it, it just the weight. I mean, of course, I can't give you every explanation for everything. All I can give you is the weight of the evidence that we have, that it seems like 70 AD, the end of the age, that was it.
Okay, but at the same time, it's very difficult for a non-full preterist to see that and switch over simply because of the logic of the of what took place. You know what I mean, in history.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, those things sounded like the end of the world, but we know, like, once you get out of dispensationalism, your eyes are open to the fact that it's not Israel only. So that's good. You can get away from that. And you can say, okay, all these things are not Israel only.
Mm-hmm.
But history continued after 70 AD, for a long time so far after 70 AD. So why did that language sound like it was the end of the world? Because it really does. And Paul talks as though it is the end of the world. So there has to be an explanation of why that was so. And you can say, no, all these, I'm just following the scripture. This is what it said. And that was like you just said, it was it. Well, what
Mm-hmm.
is it? Well, if you said to somebody, that was it, they'd be like, well, why are we still here?
Yeah.
That was it. You know what I
It,
mean?
it's I was actually speaking to some Mormons this weekend, or on Tuesday night. I met with some Mormons. I met with two Mormons like a couple months ago. I think I told you guys before. I kind of went through the preterism line because their church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they believe that the latter days is now because of Joseph Smith's restoration of the gospel that signified the last days. And I presented to them that the last days was in the first century, and he even said the same thing. He says, well, what does it mean, the last days of what, the end of what? And I said that it's the end of the old covenant, bringing in the everlasting new covenant. So once we can understand that, like the same thing you're talking about, yeah, at the end of the age or the end of the world, it seems like they're talking about the end of the world, but they're actually, again, these are Jewish people. It is the end of the world to them and to who they're writing to. This is so much in their life because, again, in Old Covenant Israel, they're more religious physically and doing all these rituals. So it's their food, it's their calendar, it's their judicial system, it's everything that is their life. So that's why it seemed like, in that sense, it would be the world being destroyed, but it's not the physical end of cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I think
and like,
one of the main reasons why I'm so not receptive to the idea, at least not, who knows, maybe not yet, I don't know, to full preterism, is because of the way I look at the covenants, old and new. Like,
mhm,
and a lot of people they don't think about the covenants enough, in my opinion. In other words, I see the two covenants as the means to the end. Like I said before, like the old covenant was the means to an end, but that end was just a shadow. And the new covenant is the means to an end. The difference between partial and full preterism is, in partial preterism, the new covenant is still the means to an end, but the end isn't here yet, or hasn't come to fruition yet. In full preterism, the covenant and the ends, like the covenant is the means to the end, but the end is also here at the same time. And individually, as people in the new covenant pass away, they don't really die. They get their ends to the promise, like their better promise. They're while they're living, they have the better covenant built on better promises. But the moment they die, they have the better promise. Meanwhile, people are still living that have that are in the better covenant built on better promises. Full preterism mingles the promise, the covenant, and the promise at the same time. Partial preterism says, no, the means to the new covenant isn't really here yet. We simply have the deposit that guarantees the inheritance, which I know Paul said that before 70 AD, so that's not really a great argument, or it doesn't conclude, that partial preterism is true.
Yeah.
So I see the covenants a little differently than most people.
Yeah.
But, Laurie and I were saying before, the main thing is that you're saved.
Yeah, no, of
Whether you
course.
go to, I mean, we all know that. I know that, but it is cool to go back and forth, debate, try to find out what the truth is for sure.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I like to listen.
I never want to sound like the guy who says, what's the difference? What doctrines? Hey, let's just all love each other. I'm not naming any names.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's definitely interesting. I don't present this stuff to, openly. I mean, like just like yesterday at the wedding rehearsal thing or whatever, there was this lady talking about her church that she goes to, and she's like, yeah, we're really a prophetic church. And she's like, are you into the prophetic stuff? And I looked at her and I was like, yeah, it's pretty good, I guess. And she goes, oh yeah, you gotta really be a good discerner when you study all that stuff. I'm like, yeah. But I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, by the way, because I already, at the church that I just attended, with the Hebrew Roots Church, I already kind of like ruined myself because I told them, and then for like months at end, it was just me versus 7 people, and it just didn't work out.
You must have felt like Donald Trump Jr. on The View.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. I saw some of that.
It is tough when you got to go against so many people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. It's just,
it depends on who it is.
Right. If they're going to start, we lost
Yeah.
that. If they're going to talk over you and not let you say anything.
Yeah. Some people don't want to hear it anyway.
I like the way this panel just really, really respects each other. It's really
But
cool.
you know what I think? I think that comes with practice. If you're not doing it, I don't think it's something that really comes natural.
Right.
I think that because we've been doing it for quite a while now, I think it gets easier and easier and easier
to listen and then
to really listen. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm noticing it's becoming. You watch these even on Fox, the Fox News channel. If you watch it, even they don't they'll bring on a guest, and they constantly interrupt the guest. It is so annoying.
Mm-hmm. Most people are trying to formulate what they're going to say in their minds. They're not even listening to what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just becoming rudeness. It's just becoming,
Yeah.
all I know is that I hate when you go look at your phone and then I always click, how it says leave the meeting.
You clicked the wrong one?
I always click the wrong one for some reason.
Oh, is that
So
what happened? No, I was just mentioning how this panel is so awesome in that we listen to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Don't try to, overpower, talk over.
And sometimes, you get a little, a person can get a little bit, I don't know, not even heated, but just listen to my point.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely good to, be slow to speak and, and always just listen.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes somebody says something, you're just like burning up inside.
Yeah. Sometimes when I hear what I used to believe come out of somebody else's mouth, I'm like, oh God, I sounded like that.
Yeah. Now, question: do you guys know how to? I sent the Zoom thing to Joel. Do you? I don't think that actually works.
Worked for me.
So I just went on his. So what I did was is let
All
me
you
see.
have to do is give him the number for tonight's meeting.
What's the meeting ID? That's it.
Yep, that's all you got to give him. He just got to punch it in. He doesn't even have to have an account. He just has to have the app.
Okay.
That's how I do it on my phone. I just have the app. I don't sign in or anything. You can just put join meeting and type in the numbers and you're gravy.
And do you have to put those spaces in there?
It automatically does that.
Okay, so this one is 354-457-046.
Is he coming on here?
I mean, I guess so. He said he's downloading the app. He's a pretty he kind of reminds me of Tyler in a sense because they
I
quote.
went on his YouTube page and all I could see was him flexing his muscles and his.
Oh yeah, I know.
And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I don't think men have a real sense of what
He's
that
into
looks like.
bodybuilding. He always posts on
It's
Facebook like he's 1990 world champion bodybuilders. Bunch of thongs everywhere, just tan as can be. I'm like, all right, that's a little weird. But I mean, what reminds me of Tyler is Tyler reads so much, so he can quote you all these scholarly positions and whatnot. And that's what Joel does.
He loves commentators. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he'll quote you, all these scholars, and which I mean, it's not just like you're saying that or whatever they say is right. It's just you have other people that agree with the interpretation. I guess. I mean, that's what I have to do for school. I hate it having to look up quotes. I'm like
I
the
know
worst.
everything everybody else says is gospel.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you think; it's what they think.
Yeah, I'm in the minority when it comes to being a good Christian who has read Christian books and commentators. I think I read one Christian book in my entire life, and I have never looked at commentators. Like never, literally.
I
I don't
enjoy
know.
reading some of them.
Because I know, like you can read them, forever, and you're gonna get a full spectrum. You're not gonna,
That's what I
you could
mean.
even.
That's what I like. I like to get different opinions.
Hey, Joel,
Joel,
summoned. What's
you
happening?
did it. Yo, can you hear us?
If you're on your phone, you have to tell it to use your device's audio in the corner on the microphone.
I think he's using a tablet.
It might still have to do it.
Can you hear us? Can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us at least? I guess it doesn't hear us. Hold on.
Looks frozen.
I've seen him typing me on Facebook. He said he can't hear anything. So I can see you. So what does he need to do?
Yeah, I had trouble too when I first signed on. What was it?
So Albert, what does do you know? Okay, so Albert,
He's taking a nap.
Yeah.
so what does he need to do?
Oh no! If you're in the thing, the at the bottom where the microphone is, where you turn it, you click it, and you have to choose use devices audio. Otherwise, it won't turn your microphone on. You won't be able to speak unless you pick somewhere for the audio to come from.
So it says it's at the bottom and what?
Should be in the bottom left-hand corner, the microphone where you can mute yourself and all that. But when you first click on it, it should give you the option of choose. You have to choose, like for my phone, when I log in, I have to tell it to use my device's audio, which is the phone's audio.
Yeah, me too.
So if you don't do that, you can't say anything.
What is it? That arrow to the right of the mute button?
No, it should just be when you click on it. It shouldn't be to the right of it. Like I don't have to do it on my computer, only on the phone or if it's a different device, like an iPad or something. Not on a PC though. A PC you should be able to just speak. As long as you're unmuted, which you are.
Technical issues.
If you can just find where the microphone is and then just click it, it should be right there. The option to choose the device's audio, or I don't know why he would be having such an issue. Unless his microphone was not plugged in or something. It's me. Maybe get him to try his phone. It might, because that's should be really easy.
Oh, there's something broke down. Technology. Oh, he's in Canada too, by the way. You got another Canadian on your team.
Nah, if he's from the East Coast, we want to
Yeah,
separate.
true.
We want to separate from them.
My wife watches a TV show called Heartland.
Oh
You
yeah,
ever heard of it?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they filmed it in Canada. My wife loves it. She wants to go to Canada so bad.
Where does she want to go?
I think it's the province next to you,
Alberta?
I guess.
Why would she want to go there?
I guess that's where they filmed the TV show.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Do you guys have the prairies down there?
I don't know.
You must have something real flat down there. Farming land?
I mean, I live in Florida, so. Well, no, with this TV show, there's like mountains and stuff.
I wonder where they filmed it.
He said, I see audio, but when you click it unsafe to call a number.
It shouldn't tell you to call a number. It should just say call using audio device or using device.
You sure you sent him the right link?
You don't want to call
he's on the link. He's popped up.
Yeah, he was there. All he has to do is turn his audio on, and the way that you do that is by clicking that button.
All right, let's see if he got it. Yo, yo, yo.
No.
So now if you click the microphone, mute, audio, whatever it is, it should give you two options. One is call using the device's audio, which is what you should pick. And the other one is, I don't know, it's some other crap.
Yeah, because he's not hearing or speaking, so.
I know, so his whole thing is not working.
Yeah, tell him to use his phone if you can. Like, tell him to try on his phone. It might be easier.
See, I have a arrow to the right of the mute button that has all the audio settings.
Yeah, you won't even get the option I'm talking about unless you're using something, not a computer. Like, try it on your phone, you'll see what I'm talking about. But if you don't have it on your phone, then
But he's got a tablet. That should work like a PC.
it should work like a phone, I would think.
Really?
Okay, so if I click my thing, I have a mute, start video, share contact. Oh no, what's this one? This just shows me the participants. Okay, and then more. And then if I click more, am I raising my hand? Oh
No,
man,
but he's raising his hand, I see. Now you're raising, yeah, you're raising your hand, he's raising his hand.
dang. Wrote down, and he said his phone was stolen.
Oh dear. Well then. Yeah, he's gotta, if he's not hearing us, or like he's gotta be some sort of, his stuff isn't plugged in or something. Like he's got it turned off, turned down, I don't know.
Hmm. So okay, so
Hey, I
hello,
got sound now.
yo, can you hear me? I can hear you.
Yeah, I got sound. I can hear someone.
Oh yeah, that's me, Zach. Yo, 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 yo. I just heard you. Now you muted yourself.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you're good.
It said
Sweet.
to click to dial the number. Then there was two phone numbers, and there was this other option. I didn't see the other option.
Yeah, that's the one. There shouldn't have been any phone numbers, but yeah, it should have been just whatever the one with the call using the device's audio.
Well, cool. You got it to work. Sweet, man.
Tech challenged anyway.
Yeah. So what's going on? What you doing?
Well, I was joining your guys' group for the longest time. Then went back pretty much partial. And was with a group of other guys doing projects and whatnot. And you know, I kind of changed things up, obviously, this last week. And I think a few of them could see the train coming. You know, had it out with Sam Frost and told him I lost all respect for him anyway. I told him,
Oh wow.
you know, I lost all, you know, saying the kingdom has drawn nigh, is at hand, like this lighter's at hand, means the kingdom is,
Yeah, it's near you.
open up, it's near your heart, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
the parousia was at the ascension. You know, I've read the literature too, you know, Gundry on Daniel 7, you know, in his monograph on St. Matthew, or the Old Testament in St. Matthew's Gospel, Robert H. Gundry, page 431 and following. In that, he has a discussion on Daniel 7 and how it's used in Matthew and in the New Testament. But in Matthew, it's used for the parousia as descent language, not ascent language. And if you look at the 15 times, Daniel 7, 13, and 14 that I've done,
Mm-hmm.
about 15 times in the New Testament, only Matthew 28 and Acts 1 have Daniel 7 as the ascension. It usually refers to the parousia. Okay, so I never agreed with Sam on that anyway, but with Daniel, the usage of Daniel 7 in the New Testament. And I was sitting back the longest time until the last month in that group. I'm the only partial preterist, and not even just a partial preterist, strong partial preterist, taking,
Are they're not partial
major
preterists?
fulfillment. No, none of them. So they all went from full preterism to, you know, future land, you know, and so
Yeah.
I'm a very vocal, strong, and so I was just kind of biting my tongue, and then I just said, heck with this, man. I'm let, you know, they're gonna put down preterism in general again. I'll let them have it, and I did on Luke 19, and I said, well, come on, guys, who's gonna refute me? And Don was coming on my side. on
Oh,
Luke
wow.
19 because I just smoked them. I said the kingdom parable of the nobleman. I said, well, let's discuss it then. And I gave an exegesis, but yeah, I was downward the last month. But yeah, we had projects and that, and Lance put out a book and recently and whatnot. Yeah, it's basically it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you had a pretty eventful little journey there. Yeah. We've
Well,
just been doing the
yeah,
same thing.
like since I think with you guys have brought up that implication argument, I think.
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
be
That's what
wrong.
that was. Mm-hmm.
And Lance in his book, he wrote a book, and it's with our logo on our site, on their site now, I guess, hoperesurrected.com. He wrote a book against hyperpreterism. I forget the title. Refuting full preterism or refuting hyperpreterism, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in the acknowledgments and the thank you, he said thank you to Joel for, countless hours going over implication arguments. And he developed one, he thinks, and we went back and forth, and I, bammo, right away, shot that down. It was yesterday, yesterday.
How
So,
did you shot it? What did you, I guess, shoot it down with?
well, we had an exchange. He did a video responding to my video coming out as a full preterist, and immediately I just watched his video, took notes, and bam, I responded.
Yeah.
And I said, give a second, and I'll refute the second as well. He said, no, there won't be a second, because he knew he didn't deal with. There was 3 texts: Matthew 16, of course.
Uh-huh.
Second Thessalonians 1, I think, and First Thessalonians 2, Matthew 16, and Romans 9 to 11. His implication argument is Romans 11, the fullness of the Gentiles.
Yeah.
And so boom, right away I went right for the jugular, and I refuted that in various ways, very briefly, Romans 9 to 11. Then I went to my text, right? And that's the only text he didn't touch was this text that I pounded him on. I said, you didn't even touch my exegesis. You brought up the text and you gave more of your exegesis. You didn't, that's not a rebuttal, of someone's video. You've given another affirmative. That's, that's not.
Yeah, I did actually watch that video, the rebuttal one that you did.
Yeah, he did his on Facebook. He didn't put his on YouTube, I don't think. It's just live on Facebook, right? So.
Yeah, I don't even know who the guy you're talking about is, but
he's the guy who wrote the book, came out with the book, what was it, last month, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, it's definitely pretty interesting when you talk to people that are just completely against it. I mean, obviously they see it differently. I mean, we all see different things. Like, I mean, there's certain things like, was the resurrection like a physical bodily resurrection, or was it corporately, or I mean, like how does that all play out? Like I was just saying before, like I just think like the overwhelming evidence of the entirety of the scripture is that the end of the age, 70 AD, resurrection was going to happen at that end, at that judgment, and it did. And I mean, maybe, somebody can look at, some little passage here and there and like maybe say, oh, what about this? But the overwhelming evidence is that, you have like Daniel 12, Matthew chapter 24, you have all these like major like haymakers, in my view, that just point to it being in 70 AD. Even the Matthew chapter 16 thing, I don't know how somebody can get around that. And you made an interesting point when you had brought up the where it says truly, like meaning like it, you wouldn't be able to disconnect verse 27 from 28.
Yeah.
I forget exactly the wordage that you said there, but it
Amen.
says, yeah, like yeah, amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
That's the
But
Greek word there.
well, Don, I read Don on that, and I don't think he got it from France, so I'm not too sure where Don got that from, or he developed it himself. But I looked it up before, and he's right on it, or I wouldn't have brought it up, because you can go through the whole New Testament. I just went through Matthew, then looked briefly through some stuff up to Acts, and every time it's used, it's always reaffirming what was it. It's sort of like a conjunction, like gar, for, and you see that in verse 27. 27
Yeah,
is
for
tying
the Son of Man.
Yeah, for the Son of Man. He's tying in what was just said. Well, what the context starts in verse 21 in this section of chapter 16. Well, what was just said? Well, Christ is going to be crucified in Jerusalem, and they're going to suffer martyrdom. So that was just said, and because of that fact, he's going to come in judgment and in his kingdom. So there's going to be reward and vengeance. There's going to be the Davidic kingdom and all the blessings there, all the promises fulfilled at the same time, and vengeance. And basically, that's what he's getting at. And there's no way to divorce that, even the themes. In 2 Timothy 4:1. And in that context, Paul is drawn from his saying of Christ from Matthew 16:27. In 1 Timothy 4:14, he says, we'll be judged according to their deeds, speaking of the parousia. And in 2 Timothy 4:1, he speaks, I don't know if about there is in a proper form of the infinitive, but usually in the infinitive, mellow is about to. So he's about to appear, judge the living and the dead in his kingdom. Well, that's a lot like Matthew 16. And a lot of people say Christ and Paul didn't have the same eschatology. Well, I'll tell you what, they did. But that's exactly Matthew 16. He will come in his judgment in the kingdom. That's 2 Timothy 4:1. But yeah, they are united. There's no way to take barely or truly and divorce those two and say, well, verse 27 is the parousia in the future, 28 Pentecost, the resurrection, or
the transfiguration.
Yeah. No, not at all. You can't divorce those two texts. And I'm in talks right now with William Vincent, who had an exchange with Don. We're in talks, probably. He wanted to do 15-minute exchanges like Miano, like do weekly exchange. I said, no, we're doing it straight up. We're not doing it at all. Because he challenged me on it, Matthew 16, and I said, yeah, for sure. I said, we're not doing 15-minute. No, that's not a debate. I said, we're going to do it, proper. So, so hopefully that happens, debate on Matthew 16.
Cool.
Because, here's, and I'll stop here. One strong argument that always convinced me too on that text, and it was a no-brainer, for the last 13 years, was, look at the Matthean context. Look at Matthew 21 through 24. It's the same motifs and concepts, themes of Matthew 16. The crucifixion, the death of Christ, the persecution of the disciples, and him coming in his kingdom and judgment. Matthew 22, the wicked husbandman, verse 33 through 43, the prophets, Christ, the heir, the son to the kingdom, and the apostles, and he comes in his kingdom in judgment. Matthew 22, the same thing. The servants are sent, then Christ's servants again, comes in his kingdom in judgment. Matthew 23, no-brainer, everyone agrees, that's 80-70. Matthew 24, so it recapitulates, repeats over and over this theme of vindication in his kingdom. The kingdom's for the remnant, a vengeance is for the nation as a whole.
I'd also tie in 25 too.
24.
What about 25 too, though? You have the kingdom.
25 is, if you look at, it's identical to 24:30 and
Yeah.
25:31, identical.
Yeah.
They're identical texts, and all commentaries agree with that fact. They're identical texts with 24:30 and 25:31. And some would say 26:64 and 13:41. I would say, yeah, all of them. Yeah, all of them. But definitely 24:30 and 25:31. So we have 21 through 25 with the same themes and the same timing as chapter 16.
Hey, Joel, it's Matthew. How you doing,
Hey,
bro?
Matthew. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, I'm curious, how would you define the remnant? Is it pertaining to Israel only, or, I mean, is it pertaining to the new covenant,
Yeah.
Jew and Gentile in one body?
No, I would say it's ethnic Israel, and then you have the nations that would come in. Um,
Also
I
considered remnant?
just ethnic Israel's the remnant. The believe in Israel,
Okay,
faithful Israel. That is the remnant, the faithful remnant.
I would agree.
Um,
Yeah, I would agree.
yeah, if you study the prophets, but not just the prophets, most drop the ball here. Dispensationalists, and we're seeing these anti-preterists drop the ball here as well. They do not recognize that the New Testament writers, and I can quote different New Testament scholars that frown on scholars for not doing this. Even Ladd, who was a premillennialist, historic premillennialist, but he wrote a whole book on this. You know, the already and not yet of the promises, of the fact that the promises, and the New Testament writers interpret the covenantal promises of the prophets. So we need to understand the prophets, their historical background, but we also need to understand how the New Testament writers interpret them. Are they echoing? Are they direct citation, allusion, quotation? But we can't ignore the fact that we have divine, the analogy of Scripture, interpretation by the New Testament writers of the prophets, of the Psalms, Messianic Psalms, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would agree about the remnant. And there's an interesting thing that goes on in John 6. Paul even talks about the remnant in Romans 9 through 11.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, that they got, you know, what is it? Romans 11. Hang on. It's Romans 11:7. He says, "What then? Israel has not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election has, and the rest were blinded." No, that's not the. Hang on. Is it?
There's
Is it
verse
down?
5 as well in chapter 11. Maybe what you're looking for.
Romans 11. Oh, I can't remember which part of Romans. I don't know if it's. I think it's 11. There is a verse literally where the word is used, and I thought it was Romans 11:7, but
Verse 5.
is that where it is? Hang on.
Yeah, he speaks of the remnant in 5:7, and then in chapter 9.
The remnant. No, and that's not even the verse I was thinking of. There's another one.
There's 9. There's 9:27.
That must be. Oh, maybe that's it. What does that say?
9:27, 28. 27 to 28.
Yep. So an interesting thing in John with the feeding of the 5,000. You have the first you have the fragments of the food being put into the 12 baskets. And then it says, so that none is lost, which is an odd thing to say about fragments of food. And then a little further in John 6, Jesus says, no man can come to me unless the Father sent me draws him. But those, of those the Father has given me, none will be lost. So he mimics what he said about the fragments being put in the baskets. And then what you brought up Mark 16 before, but what's interesting in Mark 16 is in all four gospels, you have the feeding of the 5,000. You have the 12 baskets mentioned in all four gospels, which I think is really significant. And in Mark 16, Jesus says to them, "Do you not yet understand or remember the 5 loaves at the 5,000? How many baskets you took up?" It's very important how many baskets were taken up. And Jesus asked, don't you understand? He also says it in Mark 8, when I broke the 5 loaves. I mean, it's not like he says it again, but it's just a reiteration. When I broke the 5 loaves for 5,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? They said 12. So it seems to me like, and Jesus says, how is it that you don't understand? It's a rhetorical question. Of course, they don't get it. They don't get that the 12 are representative of the remnant of Israel, the ones who are going to follow Jesus into the new covenant, make the changeover. So I look at this remnant thing, maybe for different reasons, but also as the ones, had there not been a remnant, Paul quotes Isaiah, they would have been like Sodom. It would have been like Gomorrah, had there not been a small remnant, though the descendants be as the sand of the sea. It's obviously pertaining to Israel, the remnant. It's
Yeah, and
funny
he
how
says,
dispensationalists say that the remnant is, anyone who gets saved today, or that there is an ethnic remnant of Israel coming in the future. Either one. Did we lose Joel, or is he there? Oh, there he is. Anyway, just wanted to say that about the remnant. It's one thing, like for 20 years, I never noticed those fragments of food being put in 12 baskets so that none would be lost. Meanwhile, the same thing is said about literally the 11. It even says that in John 17, when Jesus is praying the Gethsemane prayer, he says, of the men you have given me, I have lost none. And then in John 18, at the arrest of Jesus, he says, you sought me, you found me, let these go. And then John comments and says, that the saying might be fulfilled, of all you have given me, I have lost none. But I like this argument when I talk to Calvinists, because the Calvinists say all who are saved are the ones who are given to Jesus, but the ones who are given to Jesus in John 6 are the very same ones who are drawn, are the very same ones who none was lost. So, of course, no one can come to Jesus at that time because of the blindness over the nation. Isaiah 6.
I was just going to say there with Romans 10, and when he quotes Isaiah 10, and the remnant being gathered in at that time, he says, and the Lord will make a short work of it in the earth, in gathering the remnant. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you quoted Romans 11 twice there. He speaks. He's not speaking of an abstract remnant. Chapter 10. What do we have in chapter 10? You have it's beautiful. Chapter 10. I wrote a small article on it, and I brought it up one of my videos last week. I can't remember which one, but I'll just mention them. The text. Deuteronomy 30, the restoration of Israel to the land.
Mm-hmm.
You have Isaiah 52, the restoration of Zion, and of course the regathering of the remnant, the Exodus. You have Joel 2:32. You have Deuteronomy 32, the Song of Moses, the covenant cursings in there. You have all of these, and there's another one I forget, but you have all these texts in Romans, these litany of promise passages in Romans chapter 10. Paul saying that the remnant, Israel, Isaiah 65:1, that's another one. Is all these texts, Joel 2:32, speaking of the regathering of the remnant. It's the land promise, but it's the Davidic kingdom as well. And so you have 5 promises in Romans 10. And then he just said the remnant's coming in. He's going to make a short work of it. He quotes 5 passages, quotes or alludes or echoes, whatever he's doing with them to show that, hey, guess what? The remnant is coming in right now under my ministry as the Gentiles are coming in. The remnant's still coming in. What did he say in Romans 3? He said, even if the whole nation did not believe, would that disannul the faithfulness of God? God forbid, let God be true and every man a liar. So, yeah, we see clearly in Romans 9 through 11, clearly the promises were being fulfilled then. The remnant was coming in then. The salvation, Romans 13, the appointed time, the day, the salvation was ready to be revealed. So yeah, Romans. But yeah, John is so typological. Yeah, you have the Exodus there. I have a book and I've read it on the Exodus motif in John. You have it in every New Testament book.
Oh
That's
yeah,
my favorite.
like you
That's my
have
favorite theme, the Exodus motif. I love that theme. But
oh yeah,
um,
you're referring to when the manna came down, or after the Exodus when the manna came down, because in John 6 I see that he talks about him being the bread, right? And
yeah,
if you
well,
look
yeah, that's when the manna came down. Yeah, that's what I
right,
mean.
look at
Even
the
in
parallels.
John 6, you have the
Yeah,
Exodus motif.
the
It's on every
parallels there.
page.
It's so funny how in the reason they got the manna is because they were grumbling in the wilderness. And then in John 6, what does it say about the Pharisees? It says they grumbled. Same word. So then you have Jesus talk about the bread, that he's the bread. Your fathers ate the bread in the wilderness and they died. But, this is when the first Sabbath was instituted, right there when the manna came down. Very first Sabbath.
Exodus
Jesus
16, yeah.
Jesus becomes the Sabbath. But I see Romans 9, actually Romans 1 through 11 is all Paul's treaty on, a specific remnant in Israel. I believe the remnant pertains to Israel. But I believe that what Paul's really trying to do here is say that when he says, and so all Israel will be saved, he's saying in this manner, all, quote, Israel, quote, who's Israel? Well, there's 2 Israels in Romans 9:6.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so all who are in Christ are the Israel of God. And in this
Yeah.
manner will all Israel be saved.
It's yeah, Romans 9, 6 through 8. That's is all Israel. It's the faithful remnant. That is all Israel. Not all ethnic Israel. It's not some conversion. It's all Israel within the context of Romans 9 through 11. It's one section, like you said, right? Well, yeah, exactly. 6 through 8 was overlooked.
Yeah, Paul's a tricky person to decipher. These long-winded analogies and themes.
Well, Romans, in my opinion, is a must. If you want to understand the gospel, you know what I mean. You want to understand the gospel, you need Romans 1 through 8. For if you want to understand, including sanctification, you just want to understand depravity of man and justification. Well, the first 4 or 5 chapters will probably do, right? But
Sure,
usually Romans 1 through 8 is basic
but it's
stuff
widely
we need
so
to
widely
know.
misunderstood. The dispensationalist has no clue what Romans. I mean, Paul is trying to, in the beginning, he's trying to keep saying there's no difference between Jew and Gentile now. And what advantage has the Jew? He asks in Romans 3, and then he goes on. The interesting thing, he gives 2 advantages. The first is the oracles, but then what does he do?
Oracles.
He he quotes oracles that are condemning Israel. And then he says, well, let's see what Abraham has to say about this. The second advantage is circumcision, but Abraham believed before he was circumcised. So this is how Paul is. The two advantages that he lists are really not even advantages. And his whole point is that Israel didn't get, and he goes on to conclude, Israel didn't get what they sought after because they sought after it as if it was by the works of the law, but the Gentiles who weren't seeking it got it by faith. That's his whole point. His whole point in Romans 9-11 is the law is abolished, Israel is obsolete, and in this manner all Israel will be saved because those in Christ, they are the children of promise.
I think everyone's leaving. Zach left and someone else just left.
Zach always goes out at a certain time.
People just got to go to bed. It's no worries.
Oh, okay. What's going on?
Yeah.
It's all being recorded anyway, so it's good stuff. Keep going. Unless you were done.
Yeah, I love Romans. I think I have a somewhat little bit of a different take. Romans 7, I don't think is the plight of the Christian. I think it's the plight of the Pharisee under the law. Who will save me from this body of death? The guy who wants to do right but can't. That's the Pharisee, not the Christian. And then Romans 8, but now there's no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. Romans 8 is the Christian. Romans 7 is the Pharisee. Is the way I see it.
Yeah, I've heard that take before, Romans 7:14-25, because that is a big debate. It is probably one of the most debated and they say difficult parts of Romans, that section of 7. Because some will say, well, it's the unregenerate man or the regenerate man, or the view you just said. I don't know if that's a new perspective view or.
I came to that conclusion on my own a few years ago, and then I thought nobody else believed it. And then I was watching a couple of videos by Gordon Fee. You ever see him?
Gordon Fee's a top New Testament scholar. Yeah, I have some of his stuff.
Yeah, so I was listening to his. It looked like a college lecture he was giving, and he said that, and I was like, holy smoke, somebody else believes that.
Yeah, see, that's another view then. I think this is right on Romans, but I think that view is held by some new perspective guys.
But you know what would follow in that vein? If Romans 7 is truly about the Pharisee who wants to follow the law but finds he can't do it and he's in a body of death, and then Christ is the answer in Romans 8, Paul keeps going in the argument in Romans 8 and starts using the word sarx and flesh, not as sinning, but as the law itself. So I think he keeps using the word over and over again in Romans 8 pertaining to the law, like the Mosaic law. It's like in Galatians where he says, you started out in the spirit, but you want to be perfected in the flesh. What he's really saying is now you want to be perfected by the law. So he uses the word law in Galatians the same way he uses the word sarx in Galatians, the same way he uses it in Romans 8. It wouldn't make sense if he's talking about, because if he's talking about sinning in Romans 8, then he's preaching a gospel of works. But if he's talking about the law, then he's preaching what he's been trying to do the whole time. He's been trying to say that the law, the old covenant, the people of the law, all obsolete. It was a covenant of death. It was a ministry of death. Now we walk in the spirit, in contrast.
Okay, NT Wright has a similar view to you just by scanning through. Well, I didn't get it all. Most of it here. Right off the bat, he starts discussing Sarks. When he says I is corporate, it's not individual, it's not Paul or the Christian.
Does he, so
I
he
think he
links
says
into,
it's Israel under Torah.
right, right.
Yeah, I
That's
think
it.
that's NT Wright's view, but I disagree with him pretty much when it comes to like his view of the phrase righteousness of God and justification.
Oh,
But
well,
but
he
he's very
doesn't,
good.
yeah, he doesn't see the imputation, which I disagree with as well.
Yeah, well that's what I mean. Um, I love his stuff like the victory of God, Jesus and the victory of God. I love that. You know, him going through the synoptics and saying Jesus never seen past 80, 70 and going through the parables, excellent stuff, man. But yeah, when he gets to Paul, you know, I usually disagree. Yeah,
Well,
imputation, that's a big one for me. I mean, that's the center of Christianity, in my opinion, is the doctrine of justification, you know, so.
no, I'm with you on that one. You have, you are imputed the righteousness of Christ. You may not become righteous in practice, but you are definitely imputed it.
Yeah, I've done extensive study there. I mean, it's, but yeah, I pretty much, yeah, it's so important, you know, and that's something I try to drill in even Christians' heads, you know, is the importance of this doctrine, you know, that we get it right, you know, but, but yeah, that's the center of the gospel, center of Christianity, you know, and that's what we got. Uh, the meat of Romans, you know, Romans
But
3.
it's almost,
Um,
I could also see that it's almost a non-argument. If Abraham believes God and it was credited to him as righteousness, it doesn't have, it doesn't really have to be imputed. It just has to be credited. It's the same thing. If God's going to credit you righteousness, he might as well give you the righteousness and impute it to your, you know, how are you going to define the word? Does he change your DNA? No, he's just counting the things that aren't as though they are. You're not righteous, but your faith is what God counts as righteousness. Either way, you're saved. So I don't see it as a really big deal.
well, well, are you saying that it's the faith that is imputed?
No, I'm saying that your faith is counted as righteousness.
Okay, okay,
So even though your faith is not righteous faith, otherwise it wouldn't have to be counted, you'd be righteous. But your faith is just human faith. There's nothing special about it. It has to be counted for righteousness. It's that little seed of faith that says, yes, I humbled myself and, Christ is my savior. He paid the price for me. He shed his blood for me. That humbleness, I'm nothing. My works don't count. There's a separation between works and faith, which is another one of Paul's whole arguments is works is not faith, faith is not works.
yeah, I'm in a total agreement with you, man. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's the same thing. Impute, credit, count. You know, it's pretty much it's translated logisma the same way.
Yep.
Um, you know, that's pretty much those are the meanings. You know, but yeah, he's looking at you. Not only that you've never sinned, but that you have completely, perfectly obeyed the law your entire life, and you will until the day you die, perfectly in thought, word, and deed. You know that's you know Christ's active and passive obedience. Credited to our account. We're not only not guilty, we're perfectly righteous. You know, a positive thing, before God. But that's the beauty of the gospel. You know, God justifies the ungodly, declares righteous the unrighteous.
Yeah, and the faith, it goes back to the Sabbath. You know, faith is the resting in Christ. If you're working, you're not resting. It's the Sabbath is the gospel. It was a it was a um, it was a weekly observation for 1500 years that pointed to the salvation, the rest that Christ would bring, and in the abolishing of the law, as at least a theme. You know, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. You know, he's healing people on the Sabbath. He's calling himself the Lord of the Sabbath. I believe he was raised on the Sabbath. And
Well, you have like the already not yet at work. We have rest in Christ because of his work and resurrection. But then like Hebrews 3:7 through 4:11, the new Exodus there quotes Genesis 2, quotes Psalm 95, but it quotes Genesis 2. And he uses the word, therefore there remains
the
a
Sabbath rest of God.
sabbatismos. Yeah, a sabbatismos. It's only used one time in the New Testament. Sabbaton, Sabbath, used 60 times, right? So it's Sabbath is a type of the heavenly rest, the heavenly Canaan, the heavenly land, that Abraham sought, that
Right.
that Hebrews 11 and 12, Zion being restored, the New Jerusalem. So yeah, it's a type of that too. It's a type of rest we have in Christ in salvation, in relationship with Him, in union with Him, and also of the land promise, I would say, as well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Sabbath, it's somewhere in Exodus 31, I think maybe. God says, this will be a sign between you and me.
Yeah, Exodus 31.
He gives them a sign, Ot, Aleph Vav Tav, Ot. An interesting thing with that word Ot, it's also used for the circumcision of Abraham, which God says, to him, this will be a sign between you and me. So you have Sabbath as a sign. Once God said this is a sign, then it's prophetic. It's pointing to something. It's not just a thing to do every seventh day. It's actually pointing to Christ. And in that word, with Od, which is so interesting, Aleph, Vav, and Tav. You have the Aleph and the Tav. Christ is the Alpha and the Omega. So the very word Od, has the Aleph and the Tav right in it, with the Vav in between. Which is also interesting. It was represented. It was drawn as a nail in the Hebrew pictographic language. With the Tav was drawn as a cross. The Vav was drawn as a nail, and the Aleph was drawn as an ox. So it's like you have a word picture in the word Ot. And the other interesting thing is, I looked up on some etymological websites about the word Ot, and on two websites it said that we get our word oath from the Hebrew word Ot, which is also interesting because you could look at that Ot, which is translated sign, as a promise, which in English would be an oath. Stacy, you still on? I guess Stacy fell asleep. Albert, you still awake?
Mm-hmm. You know I can't go to sleep. No, the party don't even start until 6 a.m. I don't know why you guys are leaving.
Because I get up at 5:30.
Well, then you'll already be awake, but you won't be here for the party if you're not staying. Well, that's what we used to do back in the day. We used to tell people they would come like over for the party for the night, and they would think like, oh, like cool, like midnight, 2 o'clock, like okay, fine, we can go home. Like then we would say that we'd be like, no, 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 the party didn't even start yet. This is the pregame. I don't know why you're leaving. I said, there he is. He woke up, or he's just kicking the phone across the room. Definitely. You made some noise.
I think Stacy's snoring. That's what I think.
That might be what.
Oh, there he is.
Now he's talking to us in his sleep.
I thought we put you to sleep.
No, not yet.
Lies. You were totally sleeping. But yeah, did you hear any of that?
Yeah, I heard it.
I heard it. I don't know who else did. I was just heating up coffee there.
Yeah, those two signs, Joel, I feel because they were both signs, the Sabbath was a sign to Israel, circumcision was a sign to Abraham. They both had to be fulfilled in Christ. So I feel that when Christ rose, I really firmly believe that he rose on the Sabbath before the women got there, before daylight. And I believe he fulfilled the sign of the Sabbath in his resurrection. But I believe he fulfilled the sign given to Abraham on the day of Pentecost, or Shavuot. Because the sign given to Abraham was that the flesh would be cut off. And the whole purpose of the new covenant, like Paul writes in Romans 8, is that the flesh, we talked about sarx before, is that the flesh be cut off and you worship God in the new way of the Spirit, like John, like the theme of the book of John, the woman at the well, worshiping spirit and truth, Nicodemus, flesh gives birth to flesh, spirit gives birth to spirit. So I think, and the real reason that makes me believe that the sign of circumcision was fulfilled on the day of Pentecost is because Abraham was told that he would become the father of many nations. Romans 15:8 says that Jesus was a minister to the circumcision to confirm the promises made to the fathers. What's the promise? The promise was that Abraham would become the father of many nations. What happens on the day of Pentecost? It's the beginning of many nations getting saved. So I think the sign given to Abraham was that Jesus came in the flesh, but he was cut off. Daniel 9. He was cut off, but not for himself. So you have Jesus fulfilling the Abrahamic covenant at the cross, confirming that covenant, like Daniel 9 says. He will confirm a covenant with many, the same many that Abraham was the father of many nations. Jesus confirms a covenant with many. You know, at the Last Supper, he says, this is the blood of the new covenant shed for many. Same word. Many keeps recurring over and over again. Many means the nations. You know, you have, like Joseph, the coat of many colors. What is the coat of many colors? It represents the nations. Coats being doused in lamb's blood. That's the nations being saved by Christ. You have Isaiah, he'll sprinkle many nations. The whole book is about many being saved, as opposed to one nation, many nations. You know, I've said to these guys on the panel in the past, I prayed one time, I wanted to know what it meant to have three people in the crosses. Why is there a man on each side of the cross? You know, and it was amazing. God immediately brought me to the original covenant made with Abraham. You know, after he told him you're going to be the father of many nations, he basically, you know, had Abraham gather the pieces of flesh, separate them, and put them to sleep, and in the form of a smoking fire pot, go through the middle or the midst of the pieces, so that God is making a covenant without Abraham unconditionally. It's the new covenant. God was promising Abraham the new covenant. It's a covenant, you know, before the old covenant precedes and supersedes it, because it was the promise of the new covenant. But when you get to the the King James says there's a horror of darkness covering everything as the smoking fire pot goes through the pieces. So then I realized when God brought me to that picture, I then knew what the three crosses represented. It was Christ on the cross reconciling the world to himself, but the biblical definition of reconciling the world to himself was making peace between Jew and Gentile, abolishing the law in his flesh on the cross. So he's in between the cross, but he's the smoking fire pot. The two pieces of flesh are on each side of him, and they represent Jew and Gentile.
Which one is the thief, the Gentile?
The thief who mocks him and rejects him represents the Jews, and he says, "Don't."
Okay.
He says, if you are the Christ, save yourselves and us. Remember, the nation of Israel was about to die. Save yourselves and us. Then the other guy who represents Gentiles says to the one who represents Jews, don't you fear God even when you're dying? And then he says, we deserve. So he's basically saying what Paul writes, all have sinned. He's saying we deserve what we're getting. And then he affirms the sinlessness of Christ and says, but this man has done nothing wrong. And then he says to Jesus, remember me, Gentiles, when you come into your kingdom. So, and the darkness, the horror of darkness that encompassed the initial making of the Abrahamic covenant also covered the cross. Remember, it became dark. So what's Jesus doing on the cross? Romans 9, he's confirming, he will confirm a covenant with many. Romans 15:8. Did I say Romans 15:9? Daniel 9 says he will confirm a covenant, 27. Romans 15:8 says Jesus confirmed a covenant made with the fathers. So what Jesus is doing on the cross is the same thing that was done with the covenant made with Abraham, except now it's the fulfillment of it, not the promise of it. So he's fulfilling the sign given to Abraham of circumcision. He came in the flesh and he's being cut off for many, but not for himself, but not for himself. if that makes any sense. Now, if the thieves represent Jew and Gentile, and the reason Christ came to make peace, like Paul in Ephesians quotes from Isaiah, when Isaiah says, peace, peace, the fruit of the lips, I will bring those who are far and those who are near and make peace. Paul quotes that in Ephesians and says, he has made the two one, for he is our peace, who has made the two one. So Christ is the peace that brings Jew and Gentile together by abolishing the law of commandments so that the covenant can be filled. Abraham becomes the father of many nations, not one. It's simply the change from old covenant to new. But he becomes our Sabbath as well, so that we rest in him because the law is abolished. It's like the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. All those parables in Luke are about the same thing. They're about the change from Jew to Gentile, old covenant to new. You know, you have Lazarus and the rich man. They also represent Jew and Gentile. Lazarus is laid at the gate. He's a proselyte of the gate. He's far and needs to be brought near. Abraham's bosom is not a place, it's salvation. Abraham's going to become the father of many nations. So he represents salvation, the bringing in of the new covenant. So in the end of the parable, the rich man represents Judah, who has 5 brothers. The rich man, he doesn't have a name, but the clues tell you that he's Judah, where you get the term Jew from. But there's a reversal, because the guy at the gate who's far, he gets brought near, and he gets into Abraham's bosom. The other guy who calls Abraham his father in the beginning is shut out from the kingdom. And then the end of the parable is, well, they won't believe even if someone were to rise from the dead. That's the Jew. In theme, of course, some Jews did, but for the most part, they didn't. But that's the end of a 5-part parable series. It starts off with the lost coin and the lost sheep. And Joel, you like Deuteronomy 32, Song of Moses. You speak about it quite often, right? Did Joel freeze? I think Joel froze.
I don't
see. Yeah, I think he lost his signal.
Yeah, his thing went black, but I don't know if that was Stacy's noise or his noise.
No, he looks like his internet is frozen or something. I wanted to tell him my take on Deuteronomy 32 because he speaks about it pretty often.
Well, go for it. Maybe he'll fix it, but either way, it's recorded, so you can always just check it out and get back to you if you record it now.
Yeah, let's see if I'm getting tired. Let's see if he gains motion.
Yeah, I don't know if he turned his camera off and walked away or what. I wasn't exactly watching.
I'm surprised Lori left. It's early for her.
Must be because you guys are talking partial preterism. Just kidding. But yeah, you can save it for next time, or you can just say it now and you can just listen to it.
Oh yeah, see he's off. He had.
Right.
Let's see if he comes back on. Maybe he's resetting.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe he had a freak windstorm come through and just knock a tree onto their house.
I'm hearing some
Whistling.
odd sound.
He's whistling in his sleep. He's playing the flute. He's snizzle snoring. Snizzlore.
That is funny.
It sounds like a velociraptor, like Jurassic Park or something.
Are you able to mute people as the host?
Yeah, I can totally do that, but that requires me to go downstairs, which I can do. I did it last time, but then see, like last time, then like a crazy conversation started, and I missed like 10, 20 minutes of it. That's why that last one was 2 parts. I don't know if you noticed, but not that you listened to the recordings, but the last one was, or one of the last ones was split into 2 parts because Rob said stop recording, and then I did stop recording, but then they started talking again and having a good conversation, so I had to push record again. But same thing happened. I had to mute. There we go. I muted him. He is muted. Oh my god, dog. You are gonna get in trouble. You better get down here. What do you think you're doing, puppy? You ready to go back downstairs? Nobody said you could come up here. Go, you goofy.
Yeah, Rob didn't come on. You know, he was asking where's the hangout, and then he didn't come on. Like he wanted to start early on the
Oh, yeah, no. I told him Fridays I can't start early. I mean, I've told everybody. I thought I can start early on Monday. I can start early on Wednesday if people come. But Friday, no. I have at work at least until 8:30 usually. So tonight I was even late. Like I had work so late I didn't even start until 9:30 because I had no choice. I couldn't even get here. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe he fell asleep. I don't know. Maybe he just didn't remember that I said I can't do it early on Friday. At least at the moment, while I still have to have a job.
I can't really. By the time like my day is done, it's usually about 9 o'clock.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like I already told them, like they were like, let's start early on Monday. I was like, sure, but then Matthew's like never gonna make it at 7 or 8. It's like that's why he comes on at like 9:30.
Yeah.
He can't come any earlier.
By the
Same
time
with
I get home from work, I
Stacey
usually
can't
cook
come
dinner, eat,
Mm-hmm.
answer emails, make phone calls. By the time and then I like to get ready for bed before the hangout.
Right, makes
You know,
sense. That way you
take a
can just work.
shower, brush my teeth, everything. That way when I'm falling asleep and shut the computer off, I can go right to bed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I'm probably gonna put the link up on Mondays at least at 7. Not that you'll come early, but I'm just letting you know, and everybody else that's listening. And yeah, Wednesday, I don't know, like not that many people came on Wednesday early, so I don't know about all that. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
fan of eating there by myself. It kind of ties up my phone and or computer. But Friday, yeah, I definitely cannot start early at all. Like You'd be lucky if I get here by 9.
Yep. Well, anyway, I'm going to sign off because it's late and I have to go to the bathroom anyway.
Yeah, he's not coming back, I don't
And
think so.
Joel is not coming back. Either he lost internet service or I bored him to death.
Yeah, who knows? We'll find out.
Or I
But,
gave him so much to think about, he's rifling through his Bible
yeah.
right now.
Yeah, he's probably going to be like, what happened, guys? It's going to hit me up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And just, but yeah, I'll catch you later. I sent you that link, and yeah, have yourself a good night.
Oh, you did the butcher box thing?
It should be in your.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Cool.
Sweet. All right, man. Have a good
Yep.
weekend.
You as well.
Catch up later.
Peace, peace. That's just hilarious. The timing couldn't be more perfect.
Really?
And it was recorded. Literally, he
When-
just asked about you, not that he like 5 seconds ago. He was like, "Where's Rob tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah, we joked, haha." He literally logs off. You just pop in like a millisecond after he leaves.
Was it Matthew or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I
hilarious.
tried staying up, but I've been up here sometimes, so
Yeah,
I
he
just
was
went to
just
sleep.
like, yeah, he was just like, "Oh my gosh!" Like Rob, he was like, "When are you guys starting?" I was like, and then he never came, and then here you are, 2 seconds after he leaves.
Hmm.
It's just too funny. I'll have to tell him like, "Hey, guess when Rob came?" 1 millisecond, literally, like even like a half a millisecond after you left.
Yeah, funny.
I literally he left and I had enough time to like maybe put my phone down because I was gonna like go ahead and put the phone down and just see like if anybody else came, and I couldn't even put it down all the way when you came. Like that's how fast you came.
Funny.
Bro, what's happening?
Just woke up from a short nap, or a 3-hour nap, I should say.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I was like gonna join the Discord, and I was like,
Oh yeah, sorry man, I had work. I didn't get
that's
off till
okay.
like
No
after.
worries.
There's like they're having a
Yeah,
tomorrow. All stuff had to be like, you know, all perfect. All had to get the party room ready.
yeah, no worries. So we can only do what we can do. So appreciate you even getting it going every week and every few times a week. So
I try to keep it consistent.
without you, it'd have died out by now. So really
Yeah, I
appreciate it.
agree. I think so too, but I'm not trying to brag or anything.
Is Stacy still up, or he fall
He's
asleep?
there, but he's totally snoozing. Like
Okay.
if he wakes up, he's gonna be like, "No, I'm not." Like, yep, you're talking to us in your sleep, or you're definitely full of baloney.
Hmm. Gotcha.
No, I had to mute him. I had to go downstairs and mute him because he was like snoozing on the. He was like, you could hear him. He was making Snorlax noises.
Gotcha. Did you guys do any reading or anything at all?
Yeah, no, we didn't do any reading, and that's because Zach came on, and after Zach came on, guess who he invited and actually came on?
Let's
Of all the
see.
people that we've already had on.
Joel Preston.
You were
Or not Joel Preston, Joel Sexton.
Yes, correct. Yes.
So
So they were going at it, and then after Zach left, Joel and Matthew were talking to each other. That's when everybody
okay.
started sleeping and logging. But
Gotcha. But I guess Joel went back to full preterism. He's been pulling a Rob, going back and forth. So
yes, he's rivaling you as the ping pong champion.
that happens. I sent him a message. I'm like, hey, I know how you feel. I'm like, by default, I always just keep coming back to full preterism. So
Can't give up your title.
what Zach and Joel go back and forth on?
Honestly, I was like semi AFK, so
Gotcha. No
was me
worries.
like kind of listening, but yeah, it's all
Right.
recorded right here, right now, so it'll be there for you to listen to.
Cool. Are you calling it a night then, or?
No, I mean I'm down to talk about whatever you want. I mean the recording's still going, so whatever. I mean you just woke up, so you're like, dang it, I can't go to bed now. Just woke up.
Yeah.
Have to entertain me.
Let's see. I was gonna ask you about one thing, but can't ask about that. So,
Something that can't be recorded on here. Okay, fine.
yeah, because the new YouTube policy. So.
Oh, that thing. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, but let's see. That's so stupid, but it is what it is. So I'm gonna remake a lot of my videos and try to make them better and so
Yo, I
higher
have.
quality.
Hold on, that reminds me. I got an idea here for you. I guess
Okay, well you can tell me afterwards.
Huh?
What was it, or did you want to end the recording, or?
Yeah, I mean I can if you would rather.
Yeah, might as well, and then we can talk about whatever.
Fair enough. Hold on, I need that. Wait, which one's faster, lickety split or a twinkling of an eye?
I would say twinkling of an eye, but I have no idea. Lickety split's pretty quick too.
Yeah, I have no idea either, but it's gonna probably be like 45
Yeah,
seconds.
don't worry about it. I'm gonna grab a water. I'll be right back.
Mm-hmm.